Hello, everyone. Apologies for a slight delay, but here we are. And again, with you is he? It's me, Rina Lang, one of the co-founders of this community. And today with me, I have Jackie. And Jackie is going to be talking to us about a lot of interesting things around messaging and marketing. So, Jackie, thank you so much for being with us here. Apologies for the hiccup before the session, but I know it's going to be great, and I know we have an incredibly interesting topic today. So why don't you just go ahead and share with us more about yourself, what is it that you do, and the message that you have today for our community.
Absolutely. And thank you, Rena. And thank you, everybody who's joining in live and listening to the replay. You know, that's the thing about technology. It's a love-hate relationship. You can't live with it and you can't live without it. So the best we do is just roll with it and know that all will turn out the way that it is. So I'm thrilled to be here with you. What I'm going to do is share some information with you about messaging and how that plays into marketing. I'll share a little bit of my story and how I fumbled and figured all this out, I should say, and give you some little tips and things that you can take away with today, and then give you some other ideas of how we might work together to expand that so that you begin to feel really confident in your messaging, your marketing, and there's no more of that strife every day where we get up and think, oh, I should be doing something in my business to put it out there on social media. What should I be doing? What should I be saying? All of that. So that's our goal, is to really eliminate that stress and make it really flow easily for you to have that communication that really connects with your ideal client, that ultimately leads to monetization and making impact, because that's the name of the game. So I'm going to share my screen here and get us into the presentation. I'm going to go through a little bit of information, like I said, and then I will open it up for questions. So if you have questions and you're on live, you can certainly type them into the comments box, or you can type them in live. If you're on the Zoom, type them into the Q&A or the chat box, and we'll be monitoring that and getting to it. So again, I'm Jackie Ulmer. I am the creator of the Killer Content Copy and Sales Formula Vault. And this is something that I put together over time based on my own struggles with my messaging. So this is a little bit of what we're going to cover today. I call it .complicated instead of just .com, because it can seem very complicated, right? It's like there's so many options, so many platforms, so many portals. Where do we go? Where do we put our time? So, and very often as we're doing this, we begin to feel like, is anybody getting the message? We feel unseen, we feel unheard, we feel unnoticed. Where are all those likes and shares and comments that we're hoping to get, and those leads that are supposed to come in that all the gurus have been telling us will happen if we just get out there and share our messaging? We'll talk about the mind drama that so many of us go through with social selling. We're going to go through creating that content that really does engage and sell, and what I call the #1 skill set that you want to learn, how you stand out in that crowded marketplace, find targeted buyers. And ultimately, the secret to sales is that your mess is your message. We'll go into the psychology behind selling, some systems for marketing success, and what I like to call how to become the hunted and not the hunter. So just a little bit about me. My name is Jackie Ulmer. I launched my very first business in 1994, actually stuck my toe in the world of network marketing. I was a huge network marketing skeptic. Kind of my mantra became, what's a nice girl like me doing in a profession like this? But I will tell you, over time, I built a very successful business, learned a lot about myself, a lot about the profession, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that's taken me to where I am today. So I'll forever be grateful for that particular profession. In 1999, I was kind of an early pioneer to the internet. I took my business online after attending an internet marketing seminar where it was complicated for sure. All these terms were way over my head. They were trying to sell me space on an internet mall. I didn't know what any of that meant, but what I did catch was a vision for what the internet could ultimately provide. Now, keep in mind, in 1999, my biggest worry was that Y2K was going to come along and wipe out everything as we shifted into the new millennium, and things really changed. But that didn't happen. but I did catch that vision. This was before YouTube and before Facebook. It predated all social media. But it's kind of funny, as I'll share with you as we go through this, as much as things have changed, they've really stayed the same. So, I've been an online marketer for close to 23 years. And while the platforms have changed, the marketing and the messaging, and really keeping in mind that you're speaking to one person most specifically in your messaging, and that's who you're really looking to target, none of that has changed. Took my business to the top by 2003, strictly marketing online. I've been coaching since 2005, everything from direct sales to real estate professionals, life, wellness, and other types of coaches. I've sold products and services in over 40 countries. And I've done that sharing the exact strategies that I'm going to be sharing here with you today. So know this about me. I practice what I preach and what I teach. If I don't know the answer to something, I will tell you. If it's a platform I don't really use, like Pinterest, I will tell you that too. I'm not your Pinterest expert. I know it's a fabulous platform. It's just not one that I've ever mastered with my own marketing. But believe me, you can create a huge business with your messaging and your marketing with one platform. If you really dive in, you get committed, and you get very consistent. So let's talk a little bit about the mind drama and some of the things that go on with us, and those things that can derail us. The biggest thing I really want you to write down if you're taking notes is that stories sell and facts just tell. I'm going to take you through a little exercise here in a minute that really expands on that. And I'm sure you've heard that phrase before. It's nothing new. It's certainly not anything that I created. And I didn't understand it in the beginning either. I just wanted to, throw up stats and statistics on people all day long because I didn't know how to really share my own story. We're going to talk about the problem with copy and paste and curated content. I see that all the time, and certainly saw it in the past with my own journey in network marketing, where the company was providing content and you had thousands of people that were just taking that same image, that same piece of text, and just plastering it all over social media and basically getting crickets. And there's a couple of reasons that doesn't work. And a lot of it begins with the fact that it's not really your story. It's not authentic, not to mention the algorithms of social media who understand that that's being shared over and over and over again. An important thing to keep in mind with social media is that their clients are you and I, the people who are showing up every day on social media. And their goal is to keep us addicted to that dopamine hit that social media provides for us. They want to keep us on their own platform as long as they can. And if people are just scrolling by your message without commenting, stopping, liking, or engaging in any way, they note all that, they track all that, and they're less likely to put your content out there. And that's one thing that derails a lot of people often. They don't understand the social media algorithms, and they don't understand. They think it's something wrong with them or their product or service or what they're offering, when in fact, it's just the way the messaging is being delivered. I've seen a lot of health coaches do the same thing, sharing the same content, just facts and figures, and throwing stuff out at people all the time. And it's not landing on the right ears because it's not that messaging. Then we see those people who rely on just direct messages. They have a set goal. I'm going to direct message 10 people a day or 20 people a day, and, just share with them what I'm doing, hoping that that's going to get engagement too. And over time, a lot of us don't want to be sold via direct message. It's not that we won't buy via direct message, but you have to build that relationship, that rapport. You have to really know to whom you're speaking, what their challenge is, and what the solution is that you offer. And that's why creating that very targeted messaging matters. And then, of course, I always ask the question, are you hesitant to put yourself out there? And that usually draws a lot of response. I've written social media strategies for professionals for years. And if I could build the most beautiful strategy in the world, but if I couldn't get someone past their own mind drama behind taking a selfie or shooting a quick video or just speaking to their audience from their own voice, we were dead in the water, because I would never be able to get them moving further. And a lot of that comes down to that, again, that mind drama. Who's going to listen to me? Why would they listen to what I have to say? My story is boring and it's not interesting. I hear that over and over and over again. And very often we deal with imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is that, who's going to listen to me? Do I know enough? Do I have enough knowledge to put out there? Am I credible enough? All those questions that we ask ourselves that ultimately derail us. I'm not a good writer. I hear that all the time too. And yet it's kind of interesting because in real life, we converse with people all the time. So learning to be a good writer is nothing more than just learning how to put what you share naturally when you're sitting down at the coffee shop, just having coffee with someone or in a casual conversation. It's learning how to incorporate that style of messaging because that's who you truly, authentically are. It's learning how to incorporate that into what it is that you're doing. We suffer from comparanoia and other people's opinions. And I always like to ask, it's kind of funny when we sit down to think about our hesitancy to post something out on social media, usually there's only one or two people that come to mind that we worry about their opinion. What is it that they're going to say or think or do that's going to have that negative impact on us? And then, of course, we think that we have to have that big success story before we share anything. So what are those fears? I encourage you to really take this to heart. Again, write that down. What are my biggest fears around putting myself out there with my messaging on social media or even in the offline world? Spend some time answering that question for yourself. And then, of course, that question I already asked, who is it that comes to mind that holds you back when you think of sharing a story that's out there? And then ultimately, what's the absolute worst that could happen? There are going to be those haters, shamers, and trolls, as I like to say. There are going to be those people, we all have them, who have a thought that might be negative about what we're doing. They might share something snide on social media, some comment. They might even talk about us to someone else. But at the end of the day, does it really matter? What's the worst that could happen? And so often we make up those stories about what's going to happen long before they ever become a reality. Most of the time, it never becomes a reality. We just think it's going to, and that's what holds us back. So part of creating that compelling story and that start of your messaging is, why did you launch your business? Simon Sinek said it best in his book, Start with Why. People will buy into your why, and your ideal aligned client will certainly buy into your why. What was it that compelled you to get out your credit card if that's what was involved in launching your business, buying the tools, buying the training, setting up the website, all the things that go into setting up our business? What compelled you to keep going and take those steps? And then what are your hopes and dreams and goals with your business? Surely you had those when you very first thought, maybe before you even launched your business, when you would think about all the potential that was out there. What was it that was involved in those hopes and dreams and goals? And then, of course, what are those things that hold you back, those challenges, those obstacles? What are those things that stop you? Very often, we have this tendency to think that the only way we're going to be successful is to constantly share our success story. And if we don't have that success story yet, that's where we get stuck on that treadmill because we keep thinking, I can't share until I'm successful. And yet the other side of that is I won't be successful until I share. So that's where it really gets us on a treadmill. And what I learned very quickly is that more people resonated to my story of starting and stopping and trying and failing and trying to figure things out than they did with that big success story, because all they were really looking for was to know that it was possible for them too. We have this tendency to see someone once they've reached success in their business and think, oh, it must have been so easy for them, or I could never do that, or so many different things, when the reality of it is success is really just a lot of failures along the way. So it's really beginning to reframe how we look at the word failure and realize that every failure is a learning lesson, a growth lesson, and gets us closer to success. All right, so I want to talk to you a little bit about painting that picture of transformation. And I always think the car commercials do it best. So picture in your mind Lexus or whatever your favorite luxury car is. I want you to picture that in your mind and think about the commercials that you've seen. So close your eyes even. I'm going to paint that picture for you. It's a beautiful day toward the evening. The sun is soon going to be setting as this beautiful red Lexus car drives down the Pacific Coast Highway, and you see the ocean out there, and you see the sunlight sparkling off of the ocean. And then you catch a picture of the windows rolled down and the breeze blowing through their hair as this couple is laughing and chatting and having this great experience in this great car, driving down the coast with all this beautiful scenery. And then they pull over to the side of the road. You see them embrace outside the car. And as the camera panoramically spins out to the ocean, and the commercial closes with just a little logo of Lexus and a little piece of text or somebody saying, contact your nearest Lexus dealer. Now, all of us can remember that. We can all gain something from that picture, and we can put ourselves right in that picture. We want to be there. We want to be having that experience. We want to have that beautiful lifestyle and that transformation that we were taking there in that 30-second brief commercial. We may not know the make of the car, make or model of the car. We don't know all the color options. We don't know how big the engine is or how many horsepower it has. We don't know any of that. We oftentimes don't even know what the cost of it is. We just know we want to be there. And while we may not be in the market for a car right now, we can conjure up and get that feeling of what our life might be like to have that car. Hopefully you all captured something from that experience. So that's what people are looking for more than anything. They don't want your product. They don't want your program. They don't want all the modules that are in it. They don't want to buy a bottle of pills or lotions or potions or any of that. We don't want any of that stuff. It's not even weight loss that we want, which I'll get to that in a minute. We want the experience. We want that feeling. We want that transformation, because we buy out of two emotions to take us away from something that we don't want, or to take us into an experience that we do want. So the question for you is, how do you create this for your potential clients and buyers? How do you go from just selling your programs and your products and your services to selling that experience, selling that feeling, selling that transformation? Because when you think about it, that's what Lexus or Infinity or BMW or Tesla, name the vehicle of choice that speaks to you, but that's what all of them do, at least in the luxury car division. And that's what their ideal client is looking for, the experience. Now, for someone buying a Hyundai, nothing wrong with that. That potential buyer is going to be after a different experience, which does come down to cost. It does come down to a lot of those things. But those companies know very clearly who their ideal client is and how they guide that messaging to that person. So keep that in mind. And that comes back to writing your story. Why did you buy whatever it is? What was your struggle, your challenge, your obstacle? And how was what you sell the solution? And how will what you sell be the solution for your ideal client? And so this comes back to, are you just sharing the facts and talking at people, or are you sharing your story of challenges and struggles and obstacles and ultimately figuring things out? Are you taking them along that path so that they see that they can do it too? Because the reality of it is, we all have a tribe that's out there. We all do. We all have that perfect aligned client. Those people that will resonate with what it is that we're offering, the transformation that we're offering. And they want to be seen. They want to be heard. They want to be led. They want you to be their leader. And that's where your story will begin to call them by their name, asking questions of them and getting them to raise their hand and say, yes, that is me. You have what's called a hero's journey. And I'm sure you've heard of that term before too. And it's easy to discount that if we're not writing a movie or writing a script or something along those lines. But we all are the star in our own hero's journey. And you see it all the time. If you've ever watched the Star Wars series or Lord of the Rings, even certainly Indiana Jones. I'm going back, and I know that there are others, even the Bible. Those are all hero's journey type experiences. We all have that call to adventure. That was when we were sitting there thinking, there's something more for me, something more that I want to do. And that ultimately is what leads us to our life's purpose. And our goal in creating that impactful messaging is to learn how to document that hero's journey and share it. And the best part of it is that's a learned skill set. That is a learned skill set. So the question becomes, who are you becoming along your hero's journey? Who are you becoming versus just the doing? The doing is just throwing it out there. So I want to encourage you to begin to write your own hero's journey, and don't overcomplicate it. Again, don't get bogged down in, having to have that big success story, or get bogged down in thinking, who's going to care about that part of it? Who's going to care about my struggles with that? Don't overcomplicate it. Just begin to write it. Now, I mentioned losing weight. And so this is one I really do like to share because it's so true. We all have, not all of us, but many people have that struggle with weight. And so I like to call this process the psychology behind selling. What does it take to lose weight? Now, most people, when you ask that question, will tell you it comes down to two things: eat less and move more. We've heard that over and over and over again. And if it were really that simple, everybody would be skinny, rich, and on the beach, right? we would all have that. So what does it actually take to lose weight? Oops, sorry, my slides are not moving. There we go. All right. So coming back to that question, who we buy from, what does it take to lose weight? It takes a lot of different things, but mostly from you, it takes being that mentor, someone to take them by the hand. We buy from those people who we know, like, and trust. That's the KLT of it. So people are seeking a mentor. They're seeking people who they can relate to, those people who have those shared experiences. So just taking that into the weight loss realm of things, I just picked that because that's one that most everybody at least knows of. Even if it's not been your struggle, most of us know about that. We see it all the time. It rotates. It's always in the top 3 of most Googled terms. I think it's money, relationships, and weight loss. Those are the 3 key ones all the time, and they go back and forth depending on what's going on, but that's a big part of it. And we know that it comes down to more than the latest fad diet or any of that. And when you, as a weight loss coach, for instance, or insert whatever it is you're selling, when you can share your story, share those shared experiences. Oh yes, I've tried all 25 of the latest fad diets, and this one worked for a little bit, and that one worked for a little bit, and then this derailed me, and that derailed me, and this one didn't work at all. But ultimately, I found what worked for me. I don't know if it'll work for you, but it might. Just things along those lines. That's those shared experiences and those defining moments. We all have those, and I like to break those into the category as you begin to work on your story, your journey, and what you're sharing. So that's your goal. Create your story, share that story, and know that that's sales 101. And the biggest part of sales 101 comes down to that consistency. You've probably heard this before too. It takes 7 to 9 times for people to see something before they even become aware of it. So if you're only sharing your story out there once and then thinking, oh, it's crickets, I didn't get any feedback, nobody liked it, nobody asked me to know more, nobody bought from me or any of that, you're missing the most important part of sales 101. 7 to 9 times for people to see something before they even become aware. 85% of sales happen between the 5th and 12th contact, not necessarily them seeing something, but the 5th to 12th time that you engage in some type of conversation. So again, if you're only putting something out there 1 to 4 times, you're leaving 85% of your revenue on the table. And who wants to do that? Nobody. And that's where the consistency piece of it comes in. Now, that's where we have a tendency to shrink back when we don't immediately start getting engagement with what we're sharing. We start thinking there's something wrong with us, something wrong with the product, the program, whatever it is that we're offering, something must be wrong. And the reality of it is some of the best products and services never made it because they didn't stay consistent with putting it out there. You just have to be consistent. I think about this all the time. I lived in Nashville for a time, and my daughter lives there now, interestingly, so I go there a lot. And my husband and I are both super into music. So we would go and listen to music, little local bands and artists struggling to try to make it. And we would listen to some of the best music acts out there who didn't have record deals. And then we'd listen to some of those who had record deals. And it's changed a little bit now. But ultimately, over time, it's the ones who stay the most consistent with putting themselves out there and putting themselves out there who get the deal. And too often people throw in the towel just as they're about to, crest the wave and hit that success that they want. So you have to stay consistent with it. Part of that, this is what I call this Jackie Ulmer's personal manifesto. And you can see this goes way, way down. This is just a screenshot of it. It's something that I wrote and ultimately put into a Google Drive document so I can access it anywhere. But this is what I mean when I talk about those shared experience, your story, your origin story, your hero's journey, those shared experiences and defining moments. And this is one that I put together for my network marketing career and then ultimately taking me through to becoming a coach. So I wrote all this out. It didn't happen overnight. I did it over time. I wrote my bio, and you can see like number one is my blog bio, my about me. If you go to my website, you'll see it there. And then I take pieces of that and I've divided it up into content that I can share over and over again on social media. Again, this is my origin story. I took time to write it. So I wrote it the first time, and I wrote it using a lot of words that speak to people and that I knew would get captured in the social media algorithms. So sit down and write out your entire story, no matter how worthy you think it is or how boring and bland. It's not. And over time, as you doctor it up, it becomes very powerful. Then this is an example of how I've taken this, and I use this over and over again. Once a month, or every month to 6 weeks, I like to reintroduce myself on social media. I've got new followers, I've got new friends, I've got new fans, I've got all that on social media. And I can take that story that's already written and mix up little pieces of it, and I can put it out there over and over and over again in a way that's going to attract my aligned clients. Now, the second picture, defining moment, airline pay cuts. I don't think I mentioned that I come from an airline industry background. I was in sales and marketing in the airline industry, fabulous career that I loved, married an airline pilot. And when we decided to have kids, I chose to be the one to stay home with them. And shortly after that, we had big airline cuts after 9/11. Most of you will remember that. And these were all defining moments. I have a podcast for pilot wives, which speaks to a whole aviation crowd and people beyond that. But I use some of these words where I talk about airline pay cuts and furloughs. And certainly over the last 2.5 years, if you followed the airline industry at all, it's not a pretty scene out there. Continually sharing this out there is what brings in my target audience. So I've written all this out in my manifesto with the ability to share that over and over again. And then I have a story called Mean Janine, who was my neighbor who laughed at me. And I mean, literally, like threw her head back and slapped her knee and laughed in my face when she found out that I had gotten involved in one of those things in network marketing. And I had a choice to make that day. I could either allow that to derail me and to quit, or I could buckle down and keep going. So it's a shared experience, because I don't care what business you've started. Once I moved out of just network marketing and started coaching with real estate agents and started coaching with coaches and other internet marketers, everybody shares the same story of rejection by their family and friends. Get your head out of the clouds, go get a job that'll pay you well. I mean, so many times if you're on that entrepreneurial journey, you hear that. So that story is the same. And so I use that story repeatedly to be encouraging to people. You are not alone in your struggle. We all face that. It's how we deal with it that makes the difference. And then this is another one of my Mean Janine defining moment. And then I like to use holidays. I absolutely love holidays. So July 4th is coming up here in the US, and you will find me with my July 4th hat on posting something. I really like to take advantage of the holidays. And again, from an algorithm perspective, it's a great move because people love holiday stuff, but I like to do it in a way that's engaging, with a photo of myself in attire, holiday attire. You should see my Halloween photos, just having fun with it because it gets attention. Now, I also have a thing called the Curler Chronicles, which kind of happened randomly, but I use these crazy big Velcro curlers. And a lot of times I'll go live on Facebook in my curlers, and I call it my Curler Chronicles because it gets people to stop. I mean, who doesn't stop in the news feed when somebody's live on video with their curlers on? And it was kind of a random thing that happened when I did that. And it got like thousands of views. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm onto something here. What do I care, right? It's kind of coming back to, who do I really care if they see that and they think, well, that's dumb, or why is she doing that, or whatever? They're not my ideal client. They're never going to do business with me anyway, in most cases. And so I can't allow their negative opinion to slow me down. So that's really what I have for you today to kind of get you started about thinking about your messaging, your impact, and all of that. There's so much more to share, really working on developing your impact introduction, taking that and developing all that into your business story, spicing up your content. I remember I talked about everybody thinks that they're a boring writer and who's going to listen to me and all of that. But we go through how to spice up that content, action verbs and power words. I have lists of those that you can use to interject into your story to make it a best-selling novel, if you will, because that's really it. That's why people have editors who write books, because they don't have all that at once, but they put that in front of another set of eyes or run it through a system where they can jazz all that up. And then I certainly take you into honing in on who your target audience is. So I encourage you to go to streetsmartwealth.com/challenge. I've got a free video series there that's going to walk you through a lot of this, and give you some of those key pieces so that you can begin to do that. And then, if you want to get started in the killer content vault today, you can go to streetsmartwealth.com/killer, and you'll start getting massive results. Get killer, I should say. You'll start getting massive results in short order. And I would love to open it up for any questions that you have at this point. And Rena, any comments that you have to jump in, certainly let's do that, and we'll get those questions answered.
If you would like to stop sharing the screen, then
I will do that. All right.
Thank you so much for sharing all your insights. So many good reminders there, and also suggestions. And it's definitely true if you start building in stories, and there are stories happening every single day. Like one thing that caught my eye today when you were sharing one of the slides, you had the word comparanoia. And I'm like, wow, that's so catchy, that's so cool. And it actually up my alley. So I coach around mind and brain power. And I'm like, this is something I could actually write a post about, and I can give you credit, and I can tag you in my post, and on LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever I talk about, and add some of my special sauce to it, my opinions. And there you go, there is a story. People love this. Every single day there are certain things happening, little accidents that you can take note of and maybe write about, or little insights. You meet people all the time. There are new ideas coming your way all the time. And just checking in and observing, it's a good way of doing it. I myself, I'm working right now with a copywriting coach. And when I suggested to her, like, what are the things I could be writing every single day? And one of the things she said is exactly that, writing little stories about all those little things that are happening on day-to-day basis, because you don't have to write a full-blown blog post. It can be just those little things that happen to you. It might be helpful in making a point, whatever the point that you're trying to make. And you can do that, build that into your strategy. And so it doesn't have to be some really big transformational points in life or experiences in life that happen to you, of course, it's good. It's good to have those. But again, every single day, interesting things are happening. So yeah, I'm thinking about that. Thank you.
I love that. And you know, that so many people struggle with, what do I write about today? Again, who's going to listen to me? But you're so right. And I started a long time ago, you know, with my phone on my notes. I would just, as inspiration would hit me. And I want to share just a really quick, brief story if we have time for that, because when you said that, it made me think of it. This was a few years ago. I was moving my daughter, I think, back into her college dorm. And I have a great relationship with my daughter, who's 27 now and lives in Nashville. But so this was a number of years ago. I was moving her back into her college dorm. She went to school in Flagstaff, Arizona at Northern Arizona University. And it's a small little community, but it's a fabulous community. And after we had moved stuff in, she and I were at lunch. And we were just having a great conversation and talking, and we like to order a bunch of little things and split them and that kind of thing. And when I went to ask for the check, the waitress came over and said, somebody's already picked up your tab. I'm going to get choked up. This always makes me get choked up. And I was like, you're kidding me. Like, who? I'm looking around. Nobody knows me in Flagstaff. They might know her. It was probably her second or fourth year. She studied abroad, or third. But anyway, and then she kind of motioned to this table of men who were sitting behind us. And I turned around and he caught my eye, and he came over and he said, he's a counselor. He's like a psychologist. And he said, I work with families in strife. And I have to tell you, observing you and your daughter sitting there, having this beautiful lunch and talking and sharing food and all of this, he said, it was so inspiring for me that I had to buy your lunch. Well, I took that and I made, you know, I thought about that, and it was like, I took that and made it into a blog post and a video and a whole bunch of stuff, because I thought, what if I would have never been brave enough to start my business, which allowed me to be a full-time at-home parent and build a relationship with my daughter. We started a trend of mother-daughter trips where we would take 1 or 2 a year, just the two of us. And we have traveled all over the world and really built this strong relationship. But that was my thought. How do I convert this little experience that most people would think, well, that was really nice, but what about it? But I turned that into so much good content, again, to inspire young mothers who are struggling with the business and thinking, I'm never going to be successful. And I feel guilty for time that I'm taking away from my family working on this business. But when you said that, I don't know why that particular story jumped into my head, but I thought that was a powerful real life experience that I was able to take and segue into a lot of different pieces of content.
Yes, and that's a good point. You know, we gotta take our life into our business. So if you're still struggling with whatever you're doing, for instance, you're a coach and you're still struggling with your niche and you don't know what to write about, chances are maybe you are still not quite aligned with your niche. That's one. And second, it's again, I'm a big advocate of audience first. Never ever attempt designing content, writing content, developing online courses, group coaching programs, until and unless you build up some sort of a audience that you've talked to, you've met them one-on-one, you've listened to what they have to say, you've collected notes of what they have said. And based on that, you design content. And actually, a lot of my content, I'm a big fan of writing down all those little juicy the word choices that people have, like paranoia. I'm like, I would have never come up with a word like this, but I love it. And I don't know if you came up with it, or you coined it, or somebody else, but it's so juicy. And these are the golden, juicy nuggets that often come out of conversations that I have with people. And then I write notes around that. Then I type it up and then I collect it. And this is the foundation of my content. And I build those words into my content. And that's how I recommend you go about it. If you don't know what you write about, then you have not built up your audience.
I think you're so right, Rena. That's so beautiful. That's such valuable information.
Yes. And then once you have your audience, if you still don't know what you write, keep talking, and then read books on your topic. There are so many good books on your topic where you can get new ideas. I'm a big fan of also of running around with my phone and voice recording and typing it up. You know, it gets all typed up. And then I have a bunch of notes here. And then I do an airdrop, and then it's on my computer. I rewrite it. I add emojis to it and create something on Canva, and then it goes onto my platforms. So, and that way, it's really, it's your life. You know, whatever you post today, it's really something that is close to your heart. You've been thinking about it, and it somehow affected you, influenced you, influenced your thinking. And these are also the ideas every single day I read. And often whatever I read these days, this is what I talk to people about today or on the next day in my coaching sessions. And it's somehow, it's just so aligned, like, oh God, this is what I just read this morning. You gotta hear this. And that's what you gotta do. You know, it's your life. It's whatever your niche is, chances are it's your story, it's your pains, it's your experience, it's your own transformation. And that's why you're helping people to transform in the same area. So if you do it this way, there won't be ever content lacking. If you feel like you might not be a good writer, like this is my hiccup. This is what prevented me for such a long time from actually coming up with content, is because I didn't feel confident. I love writing, but I didn't feel confident. And so now I'm working with a copywriting coach, and now I have an expert who is there to advise me and help me. And so perhaps this is something you can do too. Did you work with a copywriting coach, or did you just?
Oh, I've taken, I did never actually work with a coach, but I've been trained through programs by the best, from Frank Kern to Dean Jackson. I mean, I've taken a lot of those copywriting courses, and, you know, same thing, just really drilled down with it. And I think one of our challenges is the lack of confidence, certainly, but we tend to reflect back to some negative red check mark that we got on a paper that we turned in years ago in school, you know, for bad grammar or a run-on sentence or any of that. You can throw most of that out the window when you're writing copy online for that. Now, obviously, good grammar to some extent matters, like try to get your spelling right there, and there, like there's, you know, so you do want to work on that a little bit, but I do fragmented sentences all the time, because that's how I talk. If we were at the coffee shop and I just did it, I just changed mid-sentence. That's how we talk. That's how we engage with people. We don't sit down one-to-one with people and think, oh, I have to have this exact sentence, period, and then I'm going to say the next one, period. We talk, we converse, we get busy with our hands. We're passionate, we're reserved, we're this, we're that, we're all of that in real life. And so we want to get that into our writing for content. And I think this is the best part for people who struggle, because when they sit down, all they're thinking about is being grammatically perfect and, you know, all of that. Just start voice talking into your notes on your phone. Just start expressing your thoughts, your feeling, whatever it is that comes to mind. You'll have to go in and edit it, because it's never just right and it gets some of the words wrong, but that's a good starting point. And that's you expressing from your authentic self. And over time, sometimes when we first start doing this, we can get a little, you know, lack of confidence or anxiety too, thinking it has to be perfect. But over time, as you just realize, you can you can hit delete anytime you want, but that's a good way to begin to get into the flow of your own authentic story and not get bogged down with, you know, the little components that don't really matter.
Yes, and if it still holds you back, like the quality of your writing still holds you back, there are several tools that I can recommend that have been super helpful in my journey. One of them is, of course, Grammarly. I think this, ever since I installed that plugin, and now it's popping up everywhere and anywhere on any kinds of content that I produce, any type of program that I'm using on my laptop. This is such a big thing, and it suggests to you already, the free version, how to rewrite if the sentence may be a bit choppy. Another tool that I highly recommend, it's called quillbot.com. Quillbot.com. I'll write it under the video. And what it does is, actually, the free version allows you, I think, up to 250 words or so. You can just drop in a paragraph, and it will suggest to you how to rephrase it, how to paraphrase it. And so sometimes I use that especially for headlines. So if you have a headline, it will suggest to you how to rephrase it. Another plugin, actually the hiccup that we had today was because I was experimenting with all kinds of different plugins, but there's another good plugin that I got recommended recently, and it's called Word Tune. I think this one, Word Tune, and what it's actually allowing you to also check how good is your subject line.
Very important.
Yes, and so you can play around with those plugins, and you can also get Quillbot as a plugin. You can get Grammarly as a plugin, and so on. And another tool that I was going to recommend. Oh, I forgot. There was another tool that I was going to recommend, also the same for writing. What was it? Okay, if I remember, I'll drop it in the chat. But there are lots and lots of tools these days that you can use to help you with the quality of your writing. I remember it. It's a good point. Producing content in a conversational style, as if you're talking to someone. Now, from my experience, when I have somebody in front of me like you right now, I feel like I'm much more energized, and there's an exchange of energy happening. There's an exchange of ideas happening. And when I have audience, I feel like I'm on the roll, and ideas are flowing, and even new ideas are coming up. And so I really like having audience. There's just something like maybe like a mastermind type of thing, that we're exchanging all that information. So I prefer that rather than just by myself, kind of like talking to my phone. And so I've been recommending this to my clients, to many, many people. If you are trying to produce content and writing is really not your forte, why don't you just invite somebody, a friend, to join you on Facebook, to be there on the other side and ask you questions? And you can even suggest the questions you want them to ask you, so that you can freestyle and tell them what is it that you know about it in your own words.
Yep.
That's the thing. If you start producing content that is not your words and you just half understand it, you probably are going to have a hard time incorporating it into your in the podcast messages that you have, into your coaching that you have, just because it's not your blood and sweat. It's not your own experience. You have not experienced really what it's like, and you're just parroting somebody else. That's why it's good to have somebody on the other end. Tell them what you know in your own words, and this is as much as you know, and that's it. And so type it up in your own words as much as you know about it. Don't worry about, like what you were saying, it's stories that sell, not the facts. So don't try to kill a person with all the facts. It's going to be probably boring.
Yes.
But maybe pick one fact, build your own story around it. Like, okay, this is a fact. How did you work with it? How do you implement it in your life? What were the results that you saw based on that? How do you think it's going to help your clients? So then you're going to have all those stories, that fact wrapped up in the story.
Yeah. And the thing of it is, you own your story. You own your story. It doesn't change. It grows, and you add pieces to it, but you never have to fumble and think, oh, what was it I said or shared or whatever? Because your story over time will just flow out of you easily and effortlessly. I'm sure, Rena, you're familiar with him, but Brendan Burchard, it's so funny. I have a number of his programs, and it's interesting, just my own marketing mind of really paying attention over time with how he presents things. He repeats himself over and over and over again. Why? Because that's what sells, that's what captivates people, and that's him sharing his story. And that's what he owns, is his story. He owns, and all of us own our story, and there's power in our story. And subconsciously, there's power in hearing that same thing over and over and over again. It's comforting. It's that know, like, and trust. It brings people in, and it gives them hope, especially when you share part of your struggles too, because we all have them. It gives them hope that they too can reach the level that they want. So there's power in that. And that's why I say people have gotten bogged down in this whole thought that they have to constantly be creating new content, right? New content. No, you repurpose it. And yeah, you can mix things up a little bit. I showed my manifesto in there. I take pieces from this paragraph, this part of the paragraph and that, and mix them together so that the The voice is the same because it's mine and the story's the same, but the way it's positioned changes a little bit just to create interest. But at the same time, if I use the same introduction every 6 weeks, most people wouldn't remember it. We don't remember what we had for lunch 2 days ago. People are not paying that much attention to you until they're ready, that they're going to go, oh, well, that's the exact same thing you shared before. Instead, subconsciously, they're being reassured that you're legit, you're still the same person. And that brings comfort, and that know, like, and trust. That brings trust ultimately.
Excellent. And I think I mentioned this on a couple of podcasts already. I decided I was going to be on 100 podcasts this year. And what I realized after having been on about 20 of them, now maybe 25, is that I repeat 80% of what I say or 60% of what I say is the same thing. And maybe sometimes people ask me new questions, but most of the time I just repeat over and over again the same thing. And that's how I wrote my ebook. It took me just 1 weekend to write it because there was no more thinking required. I said it over and over again. And then it's just like, okay, download, and word for word, I just typed it out. It took me longer to edit it and put it on Canva and such and design it nicely. But the meat of the ebook was literally a download in a weekend, sorry. And if you feel like you're still struggling with your message, get on podcasts. It's so easy to get on podcasts these days. If you fear saying the wrong thing on the podcast, it means you're still parroting somebody else. If it's your story, you will never forget it. You will never forget it. And if it's really your own experience, no matter what they ask you, and there's nothing wrong with saying I don't know. You don't have to know all the answers. But if you're passionate about your topic, about your niche, if you have experience and talk from your own experience, that's what people want to hear in those podcasts. They want to hear your story. That's one of the most interesting things, in the whole conversation that we have is usually, how did you get where you are? What shaped you? What made you? And then based on that, you share your experiences, like what you have done just today for us. You told your story, and then based on this experiences, this is what you learned. This is what's worked for you. And so, how can you possibly forget it? How can you possibly fear you're gonna say the wrong thing? Because you're not like reciting some cookbook that somebody else came up with. It's your life, your story, your experiences, your passions, your failures, your successes. So that's what people want to hear, and get on as many podcasts as you can.
I totally agree with that. It's funny, a couple of years ago, I was invited to be a keynote speaker at a woman's event, and I had my slides and everything, and had sent them over, and everything was whatever. Well, we had technical difficulties, just like you and I did this morning with this, and they couldn't put my slides up. And it was the first time, and I had 40 minutes on stage, right? But it was for, all these years, it was the first time that I ever had to just totally wing it. And I have to confess, a little moment of panic went through me when I first heard that. And then I finally thought, you know what? I've been speaking on stages for 15, 20 years. If I don't know my content well enough by now that I can just get out there and do what I say, share my story, engage people, know who I'm speaking to, know what their challenge is, know what my solution is, then I have no business doing this. And I did it. I nailed it. And I haven't relied on slides since then. Not that I don't have them sometimes, just like today, because it's kind of engaging and all of that. But what that did for my confidence level, and it forced me to really rise to the occasion. So yeah, stories are important.
That reminds me, I had such an aversion to going live by myself. As mentioned, I love having audience because I had for a long time this hiccup with or this fear of just being by myself and talking to nobody. And so there was one time, I think about sometime last year, where I was going to have a workshop and nobody came. And I was like, oh my God, this is it. I have a choice. 5 minutes in, I'm like, do I wait? Do I start? And then I had a choice. Either I cancel the whole thing or I just go and do it by myself. And at least I'll have a video and I can repurpose it, because that was the whole goal. It wasn't actually a workshop. It was more kind of like a sharing session. And just when I decided this is it, and I clicked on going live record, 4 people popped up. So they were just probably the universe, whatever, waited for me to make that choice. Now you're doing it. And
Yep.
ever since then, I never was afraid of doing it just by myself, even if there is nobody. I still prefer having audience, but if there is nobody, it's okay. But it was so funny, just then when I clicked, 4 people came, and I'm like, okay. Maybe
That's
just.
great. I love that. Yeah.
And so trust yourself, trust whatever, that there is a part of you, subconscious mind, that is smarter than you are. Surrender to the flow of things. And so long as you're there showing up, trying to do good, trying to help somebody, you're not there to for selfish reasons. And if your heart is really in the right place, things are going to flow and everything is going to be okay. And even if there are problems, technical problems, you forget sometimes something, just have fun with it. Just have fun with it. And trust is going to make you even more authentic, because people are seeing how you're struggling when it's, when problems are popping up, and that you're still, doing it. You're showing up, you're trying to solve it, you're not losing, your mind over it. And it makes you so much more relatable, because they see that you can just fail just like everybody else. And so it's okay.
It is. Again, I mean, it gives people permission to not have to be perfect. And people love to help the underdog. And when you're struggling with things like that, you kind of become the underdog, and everybody wants to rally. And even, I mean, there's nothing wrong with saying, I'm a little bit nervous. I haven't done this before. I haven't done this in a long time. And people really rally to want to make you feel less nervous or reassure you that you can do this, those type things. So, and just even saying that sometimes, most often, kind of relieves some of your own anxiety, or at least it does for me. I definitely find that if I can just take a deep breath, even publicly, it's like, okay, we got this together.
Excellent. I enjoyed this conversation, Jackie. Thank you so much for being here with us, for sharing your experience. And it was a great conversation. I loved it. And I'm going to watch the replay again and take some more notes.
Well, thank you for having me. I loved being with you. I enjoyed our conversation, enjoyed sharing, and certainly people can ask questions afterwards and I'll get those answered. And it was just a real privilege to be here with you.
Excellent. And so before we wrap up, how can people connect with you? I know you shared a couple of links. If you would like, I'm also copying the links you shared with me, and I'm going to drop them under the video.
Yep. So streetsmartwealth.com is my primary website, streetsmartwealth.com. You can just Google Jackie Ulmer too, and you'll find all my stuff. And then the video series, you can go to streetsmartwealth.com/challenge. And that will take you in there, or killercontentformula.com. I have a lot of domains. Some people collect shoes. I collect domain names.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And Jackie, maybe stay on for a few more minutes. And,
Yep.
and here.